Brooksville had always prided itself on being a quintessential small town, where everyone knew their neighbors, where doors were left unlocked at night, and where the biggest scandal was usually no more than a misplaced garden gnome. That all changed on a crisp autumn morning, and John Anderson, a well-respected local businessman, was found dead under mysterious circumstances in his home. The news spread like wildfire, leaving the townspeople in shock and disbelief. John's body was discovered by his wife, Lisa Anderson, called the police in a state of frantic distress. The scene that awaited the detectives was both perplexing and chilling. John lay motionless in the living room, with no visibles of struggles. Forced entry. The initial examination suggested a sudden, unexplained death. But something felt off to the seasoned investigators. Detective Sarah Miller and her partner, Detective James Carter, were assigned to the case. Both experienced and diligent, they knew that in a small town like Brooksville, everyone had their secret. And sometimes those secrets be deadly. Sarah, a tall woman with sharp green eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, transferred to Brooksville's police department just a year earlier, seeking a change of pace after a decade in the city. As she ducked under the police tape at the Anderson residence, she couldn't help but think that she should have known better. Small towns always had the darkest secret. James, a Brooksville native with salt and pepper hair and a gentle disposition, had seen the town through its ups and downs over the years. But even he was shaken by the sight of John Anderson's lifeless body. "I've known John since we were kids," he murmured to Sarah. "This doesn't make any sense." As they began their investigation, the townsfolk watched with bated breath, eager to know what had happened to one of their own. Rumors began to swirl as the community speculated about the cause of John's untimely demise. Some whispered about his business dealings, while others hinted at personal trouble. Little did they know that the truth was far more sinister and tangled than they could ever imagine. John Anderson was a man of many facets. 45, he had built a successful career as the owner of a local hardware store, Anderson's Supplies, which had been a staple in Brooksville for over 2 decades. Known for his generosity and commitment to the community, Don was a beloved figure in town. He often donated to local charities and sponsored youth sports teams, earning him a reputation as a pillar of Brooksville society. Despite his public persona, those who knew John well were aware of his private struggles. His marriage to Lisa had been under strain for several years. The couple had met in college and married young, but over time the passion had waned, replaced by routine and occasional arguments. Friends described John as hardworking and dedicated, but also as someone who could be distant and absorbed in his work. As Sarah and James delved deeper into John's life and relationships, they uncovered a web of deceit, betrayal, and hidden motives that pointed to a shocking conclusion. John's last known activities painted a picture of a man entrenched in his routine. He had spent the previous day at his store, tending to customers and managing inventory. He left work at his usual time, stopped briefly at a local diner for a cup of coffee, and then headed home. Surveillance footage confirmed that he arrived at his house at 6:45 p.m. That evening, John had planned to spend a quiet night with Lisa, watching television and discussing their upcoming vacation. However, Lisa reported that John had complained of feeling unwell shortly after dinner. He had retired to the living room to rest, and that was the last time she saw him alive. When she went to check on him later, she found him unresponsive and called 911. The initial autopsy report was inconclusive. There were no obvious signs of trauma or foul play, and toxicology results were pending. Sarah and James knew that they had to dig deeper into John's life to uncover any potential clues that could explain his sudden death. They began by interviewing Lisa and those closest to John, hoping to piece together the events leading up to that fateful night. Lisa Anderson was the picture of grief when the detectives first interviewed her. At 42, she was a striking woman with auburn hair and piercing blue eyes, now red-rimmed from crying. Her distress seemed genuine, but Sarah and James knew better than to take things at face value. They needed to understand her relationship with John and her potential role in his death. Lisa worked as a marketing manager for a local real estate firm. a job she had taken up after their 2 children, Jake and Emily, went off to college. Described by friends as outgoing and charismatic, Lisa was well-liked in the community. However, some noted that her marriage to John had been rocky in recent years. There were rumors of arguments and a growing emotional distance between them. When questioned about the night of John's death, Lisa recounted her version of events with a tremor in her voice. She described how John had complained of feeling ill after dinner and had decided to lie down in the living room. She had given him some space, thinking he needed rest, and had gone upstairs to read. Hours later, when she didn't hear from him, she went downstairs and found him unresponsive. Lisa's reaction to John's death was complex. She expressed deep sorrow and a sense of loss, but also hinted at frustration that had simmered beneath the surface of their marriage. She admitted that they had been going through a rough patch, but insisted that she loved John and had hoped to work through their issues. As the detectives delved deeper, they noticed subtle inconsistencies in Lisa's statement. She seemed hesitant when discussing certain aspects of her relationship with John, and there were moments when her grief appeared almost performative. Sarah and James decided to explore further, focusing on Lisa's personal life and relationships outside her marriage. Their investigation soon led them to Mark Benson, Lisa's co-worker. Initial inquiries revealed that Lisa and Mark had been spending a lot of time together, both in and out of the office. The nature of their relationship raised eyebrows, and the detectives suspected that there was more to the story than Lisa had let on. With this new lead, they began to unravel the threads of an affair that would cast a dark shadow over John's death and point to possible motives that were previously unseen. Mark Benson presented himself as a confident and composed individual, but under the scrutiny of the detectives, cracks began to appear in his facade. Mark was a real estate agent who had joined the same firm as Lisa a year prior. 41, he was known for his charm and persuasive skills, which had earned him a reputation as one of the top agents in Brooksville. However, his personal life was far less stable. During his interview, Mark maintained that his relationship with Lisa purely about mutual emotional support. He admitted to falling in love with her, but insisted that they had no plans to harm John. He claimed to have been at his apartment on the night of John's death, providing an alibi that the detectives would need to verify. As Sarah and James dug into Mark's background, they found several red flags. Mark had moved to Brooksville after a series of failed business ventures in larger cities. He had accumulated significant debt and had been sued by a former business partner over a failed investment. Financial records showed that Mark was living beyond his means, struggling to keep up with his debts and maintain his lifestyle. Lisa's reaction to John's death was complex. She expressed deep sorrow and a sense of loss, but also hinted at frustration that had simmered beneath the surface of their marriage. She admitted that they had been going through a rough patch, but insisted that she loved John and had hoped to work through their issues. As the detectives delved deeper, they noticed subtle inconsistencies in Lisa's statements. She seemed hesitant when discussing certain aspects of her relationship with John, and there were moments when her grief appeared almost performative. Sarah and James decided to explore further, focusing on Lisa's personal life and relationships outside her marriage. Their investigation soon led them to Mark Benson, Lisa's co-worker. Initial inquiries revealed that Lisa and Mark had been spending a lot of time together, both in and out of the office. The nature of their relationship raised eyebrows, and the detectives suspected that there was more to the story than Lisa had let on. With this new lead, they began to unravel the threads of an affair would cast a dark shadow over John's death and point to possible motives that were previously unseen. Mark Benson presented himself as a confident and composed individual, but under the scrutiny of the detectives, cracks began to appear in his facade. Mark was a real estate agent who had joined the same firm as Lisa a year prior. At 41, he was known for his charm and persuasive skills, which had earned him a reputation as one of the top agents in Brooksville. However, his personal life was far less stable. During his interview, Mark maintained that his relationship with Lisa was purely about mutual emotional support. He admitted to falling in love with her, but insisted that they had no plans to harm John. He claimed to have been at his apartment on the night of John's death, providing an alibi that the detectives would need to verify. As Sarah and James dug into Mark's background, they found several red flags. Mark had moved to Brooksville after a series of failed business ventures in larger cities. He had accumulated significant debt and had been sued by a former business partner over a failed investment. Financial records showed that Mark was living beyond his means, struggling to keep up with his debts and maintain his lifestyle. While following up on the lead at the pharmacy, the detectives received an anonymous tip. The caller claimed to have seen Lisa meeting with a man in a secluded park shortly before John's death. This information suggested that Lisa might have been plotting something clandestine, possibly involving Mark. The detectives traced the call but found that it originated from a disposable phone, making it impossible to identify the source. Simultaneously, a surprising piece of evidence emerged from John's business dealings. Financial records indicated that John had recently transferred a significant sum of money to an unknown account. Further investigation revealed that this account belonged to a private investigator named Alex Thompson. When questioned, Thompson disclosed that John had hired him to follow Lisa, suspecting her of infidelity. This revelation painted a picture of a man who was not only aware of his wife's affair, but also taking steps to gather evidence. Private investigators' report included photos and detailed logs of Lisa's meetings with Mark. These documents confirmed the affair, but also contained troubling information about Lisa's behavior. According to Thompson, Lisa had been acting erratically in recent weeks, frequently discussing her unhappiness and expressing anger towards John. In one recorded conversation, she mentioned feeling trapped and hinted at wanting to escape her marriage by any means necessary. This new evidence prompted Sarah and James to reevaluate their approach. They decided to conduct a thorough search of the Anderson home, hoping to find something that might link Lisa or Mark directly to the murder. During the search, they discovered a hidden compartment in Lisa's closet containing vials of the same rare poison found in John's system. This discovery was damning and suggested Lisa's direct involvement in the crime. Confronted with this evidence, Lisa's demeanor shifted. She became defensive and hostile, using the detectives of trying to frame her. She insisted that she had no knowledge of the poison and that someone must have planted it to incriminate her. However, just as the detectives felt they were closing in on a resolution, another twist emerged. Mark Benson came forward with new information, claiming that Lisa had manipulated him into helping her acquire the poison. He provided emails and messages in which Lisa discussed her plan to poison John, making it appear as though Mark was a reluctant accomplice rather than the mastermind. With conflicting stories from Lisa and Mark, Sarah and James faced a complex challenge. They needed to determine who was telling the truth and who was orchestrating a cover-up. The investigation had revealed a tangled web of deceit, motives, and opportunities, but the exact sequence of events leading to John's death remained elusive. Lisa's narrative painted her as a victim of circumstance, trapped in an unhappy marriage and manipulated by Mark's promises of a better life. She claimed that Mark had been the one to suggest eliminating John, playing on her vulnerabilities and fears. According to Lisa, she had never intended for John to die, but had been drawn into Mark's scheme through a combination of emotional manipulation and blackmail. Conversely, Mark's narrative painted him as a pawn in Lisa's scheme. He described how Lisa had gradually introduced the idea of poisoning John, making it seem like a desperate measure to free herself from an unbearable situation. He admitted to helping her obtain the poison, but insisted that he had never intended for John to die. His portrayal of Lisa as the mastermind added another layer of complexity to the case. To uncover the truth, the detectives decided to conduct a final round of intense interrogations. They hoped to catch one or both suspects in a lie or reveal inconsistencies that could break the case wide open. Sarah and James knew that the key to solving the murder lay in understanding the true nature of the relationship between Lisa and Mark and the depth of their motives. In a tense interview, Lisa finally broke down. She admitted that she had felt trapped in her marriage and saw no way out other than eliminating John. However, she insisted that Mark had been an active participant, encouraging her to go through with the plan. Her confession provided crucial insight into her state of mind and her willingness to commit murder to achieve her goals. With this new information, the detectives turned their attention back to Mark. They confronted him with Lisa's confession, hoping to provoke a reaction. Mark, realizing that his attempts to deflect blame were failing, began to unravel. He confessed to helping Lisa, but maintained that she had manipulated him from the start. Confessions from both suspects provided a clearer picture of the motives and events leading up to John's death. The detectives now had to piece together the final puzzle and determine how to proceed with arrests and charges, ensuring that justice would be served. The breakthrough in the case came when the detectives re-examined the timeline and physical evidence one last time. They discovered a crucial piece of evidence that had initially been overlooked. A security camera from a neighbor's house captured a portion of the Andersons' backyard. The footage revealed Mark entering the Anderson home on the night of John's death, contradicting his alibi and providing a direct link between him and the crime scene. With this final piece of evidence, Sarah and James were able to reconstruct the events of that fateful night. Lisa had indeed been the one to conceive the plan to murder John, driven by her unhappiness in the marriage and her desire to be with Mark. She had manipulated Mark into helping her, playing on his feelings for her and his own financial desperation. On the night of the murder, Lisa had laced John's after-dinner drink with the poison. When he began to feel ill and went to lie down, she contacted Mark. Mark then entered the house through the back door, out of sight of the street, but captured by the neighbor's security camera. Together, they ensured that John ingested a fatal dose of the poison and staged the scene to look like a natural death. Armed with this information and the confessions from both Lisa and Mark, the detectives made their arrest. Both suspects were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The case sent shockwaves through Brooksville. The community struggled to reconcile their image of Lisa and John as the perfect couple, with the dark reality of their troubled marriage and Lisa's deadly plot. Mark, once seen as a charismatic newcomer, was now revealed as a desperate man willing to participate in murder for financial gain and the promise of love. As the case moved to trial, Sarah and James worked tirelessly with the district attorney to build an airtight case. The evidence was overwhelming: poison found in the house, financial records, private investigators' report, the security camera footage, and the confessions of both Lisa and Mark. Trial lasted for weeks, captivating not just Brooksville but the entire region. Lisa and Mark's defense teams tried to shift blame onto each other. The prosecution's case was solid. In the end, the jury deliberated for several days before returning a guilty verdict for both Lisa and Mark. Lisa was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while Mark received a slightly lesser sentence due to his perceived secondary role in the crime. As they were led away from the courtroom, the once lovers couldn't even bear to look at each other, their dreams of a life together shattered by their own action. The aftermath of the trial left Brooksville reeling. The community had to grapple with the knowledge that such a heinous crime had been committed in their midst by people they had known and trusted. John and Lisa's children, Jake and Emily, were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered family, struggling to understand how their mother could have been capable of such an act. For Sarah and James, the case was a stark reminder that even in the most seemingly idyllic places, darkness could lurk just beneath the surface. They had solved the murder and brought the perpetrators to justice, but the cost to the community had been high.